we can help with the industrial design of the product. The industrial design is how the product looks. So certain customers want products to look a certain way. They have a brand and they want their product to have the brand's colors, and sometimes there's logos and shapes and stuff like that, and they want the product to fit in with their other products. So that's industrial design. Industrial design is also covering how users interact with the product, how they have to touch it or open a door, or how are they going to program it. Program's probably the wrong word, but how are they going to use it if they have to set it up to do a certain task? What's the process that they go through to do that? So it's the human factors kind of engineering and how people interact with products. That's the industrial design side, and it takes a bit of an artist, as opposed to an engineer. Sorry to say that, but it's true. But it's someone who's got a little. They have to be very familiar with designing and building products to be a good industrial designer, because you can't just put something together that's pretty with no real idea about what has to happen inside of it. Otherwise, you just design exactly what the customer says that they want and says, yeah, that'll be no problem. And never mind that the job that they ask it to do won't fit in that box. So there's a lot of pie in the sky kind of industrial design, and a real industrial designer would be much more cognizant of the practical aspects, so you can make sure that you come up with a design that's going to work, as well as look good and have the correct branding and have a reasonable user interaction.
I mean, yeah, that's generally it. It's one of those things that I've learned. Industrial design is one of those things that the end user doesn't realize how important it is until it's bad. Anything that you pick up or anything that you use, there is a lot of thought that goes into, even something as simple as your cell phone. Somebody thought about the size and the shape and the feel and the quote unquote, the buzzword is the user experience. And that all starts from an industrial design standpoint. So, whoever's involved in this product design, they need to be able to somehow articulate what it is they're trying to allow their customer to experience while they're using the product. Given a bunch of considerations, where are they going to be using the project or the product? How are they going to be using it? In what environments, all the settings, there's a lot of input that goes into an industrial design. And yeah, I mean, like John said, it's a bit of an art form. I would call it a technical art form, because there is a lot of background thought and experience behind it. But the good industrial designers know how to hide it really well.
Right. And a good industrial designer will also prevent an entire round of revisions when the beta prototype goes in front of the customer. So many times we've had people come back and say, wow, the beta prototypes were great, but the customers want this and the customers want that, and that button needs to move over here, and they don't like how this works and they want to do it this way. And that's because adequate thought on how people were going to interact with a product wasn't really part of the initial design. It was, this is what it's got to do. Just put a button there. We don't really care. Just, it needs 3 buttons on it. Put them anywhere. Let's go. We need a proof of concept. And then the proof of concept is, okay, put a pretty box on it and let's take it out for the betas. And unless you really go out and talk to your customers about, you know, how, and know how they use it and study that a lot, you're going to end up having to do a lot of revisions. But a good industrial designer will ask all those questions, and, you know, what kind of person is going to use this equipment? Is it a lab technician? Is it a mechanic? Is it just some, I don't know, you picture something that you use in the home, right? Literally anybody could touch it. It could be an 8-year-old girl or um or the
Or any of
dog,
us. Yeah.
right? Um why did it fall on the floor? Because it's light enough and the cat knocked it off the table, right? All of that stuff needs to be considered. So that's
And
in
to
the
your point,
industrial design. And then from that, you at least have a product you can shoot for. And then it comes to engineers to make it work, make it function, make all the stuff fit into it seamlessly.
you know, you mentioned a product requirements document. A lot of the inputs that an industrial designer utilizes when they start their process comes from that PRD. You know, what are the environmental considerations that need to be made? What are the user considerations, environmental concerns, all that kind of stuff is put into a product requirements document, so that the industrial designer can kind of take it, compile it, and get a feel for it. You know, one of the things that I always think about with industrial design is like, imagine, especially up in New England, you have a snowblower, right? But the snowblower is controlled by a touchscreen. It's just not going to work right, because when you're out there in the blistering cold and you got these big, heavy, goofy gloves on, you can't operate a touchscreen. You need knobs and handles and very mechanical things that are going to work in the worst of conditions. That's industrial design. There's thought behind that logic. And you know, whoever it is that said, I need to build a thing that will blow snow, said, well, it's going to be outside. It's going to be used by some guy with big gorilla hands. I need big gorilla knobs. It's very basic, but it's on that level, you know. I would say to classify an industrial design as one piece of product design, probably the initial piece. Because if you imagine product design as a finite unit, right? You've got the PRD and requirements that go into designing a product, and the output of product design is a workable unit, maybe not finished or production ready, but it's a workable unit. And then you've got this area in the middle that is the product design. The first piece of that product design would be the industrial design. That's kind of where you start. I mean, there's overlap and there's gray area. I mean, engineers will definitely influence industrial designers and vice versa. And sometimes there's aggressive negotiations in the middle. But yeah, typically what happens is the industrial designer will kind of scope out the general system, and then the engineers will take it from there and to John's point, make it function as anticipated.